All right. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am recording this webinar so that anybody who is not able to jump on can watch it later. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. I'm Lauren Hogan. I'm the Senior Director of Public Policy at NAEYC. I know a lot of you, and I'm excited to get to know those of you who I do not know yet. First, let me start by just saying congratulations to everybody. We're so excited. You all put together some incredible proposals with really exciting activities, really good knowledge about what's going on in your state, and we're just thrilled to be partners in this effort with you as we head into 2019 and this really important work to increase equitable access to high quality childcare. There's a lot going on. And we're excited to kick this off. So, I am not logistics-wise for this call. I'm not going to mute folks. This is a small enough group. We want everybody to be able to jump in and ask questions and talk to each other. If there is background noise and we do have to mute, then I will, but please feel free to mute yourselves. I know some folks are just on the phone, some folks are on the webinar. We'll send around the slides so that everybody who is on the phone has access to them afterwards, because we will be referencing them throughout. And if you have any questions that you don't want to share online, go ahead and put those in the chat box. We'll be able to monitor those as well. So as we talked about for the agenda today, we're just going to start by reviewing some of our grant partners and goals. We want to go through an overview. You all know, all of you are part of either the AUIC or the Child Care Aware Network, so you guys know our organizations really well, but we wanted to make sure that you also had some more knowledge of the work of our national partners. First 5 Years Fund, the Bipartisan Policy Center, and the Center for American Progress. So we're going to take a little bit of time today to talk about their strengths, what they bring to you in terms of the technical assistance they can provide as well. We're going to talk a little bit about sort of getting into that technical assistance work, the kind of support that we're here for. That's a huge part of this grant and this work that we'll be doing together, really making sure that you all are able to say, here are your state needs, here are your organization needs, and here are the national organizations to help you get from what your organization can do to meet your state needs. So we're going to talk more about those state and grantee needs, talk a little bit about next steps, and make sure we have some time for Q&A. Obviously, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to jump in. This is not formal. This is a real opportunity for us to engage in conversation with you. Like we said when we sent out the initial email, we really want our time together to be spent sharing ideas, sort of solving problems. We can do all of the sort of updates and check-ins about round robins for what we're doing. All of that can be done over email and in documents where we just sort of update. So we want to give folks the time to talk with each other and really connect, but to not spend all our time sort of doing the things that can be done not in a webinar or in person or on the phone format. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that goal in mind and really try to achieve it. This will probably be one of the sessions where we talk the most at you, but hopefully even here we'll be able to sort of engage with you guys with questions. Just as a reminder for the who's who, this is being funded currently, though there's lots of work around childcare and this integrates with all of it. This particular project is being funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. There are 2 national partnerships that are doing the work of passing through grants to states and of coordinating a lot of the effort nationally as well. We're working very closely between the 2 partnerships. The first partnership, that's us, we're the National Association of the Education of Young Children, Child Care Aware, Bipartisan Policy Center, Center for American Progress, and the First 5 Years Fund. Everybody obviously has acronyms, so that's sort of the way we roll. The second one, the second national partnership, is the Partnership for America's Children, National Women's Law Center, and Center for Law and Social Policy. And they have also passed through to all of these funded states and organizations. So for folks who are on the phone, there is a slide that lists out all of the funded states and organizations between these 2 partnerships. The first partnership, our partnership, we funded from 14 states. Most of you have some representation on the phone today. So we're really excited about who you all are. You all should have this information. There are also states that are additionally being funded by the second partnership. There are three of you are in those states where there's funding for 2 organizations because there's so much great work to be done. You all know who you are. The second set of states, there are 8 additional states who have been funded by the second partnership. We all are sort of sharing the same goals of trying to really elevate the issues around childcare, make sure that we're able to continue and sustain and grow the funding that is coming federally, and really making this case, broadly speaking, to make sure that more people have access. Any questions about sort of who we all are, and at the national level and at the state level? Excellent. Please feel free to throw them in. We're really thrilled by how many partnerships came together. You guys did a phenomenal job of, in a very tight timeline, of talking to each other, of coming together and really thinking about how you're going to do this work. This is a visual representation. There's a map that shows sort of where folks are funding, where there's overlap, how it's spread out. This is just so folks can see this in a different way. Just to talk briefly, you guys know this because you put together the proposal, but just to recenter ourselves for the new year, what we're really trying to do here is all together across the country, building a constituency for CCDBG and a high-profile demand for increased investment. We're expanding and deepening our pool of advocates. We're bringing our collective resources to bear on elevating the data, policy ideas, and promising practices, and really pushing our states to identify their gaps and think bigger and bolder about solving them. This is fundamentally about increasing eligibility, helping more children equitably access high-quality programs that meet their families' needs. The 3 main goals that we all targeted towards and then we want to keep in our minds are to maximize CCDBG utilization, influencing states to new resources to expand access to quality, to equitably expand access to high quality, and to drive increased state investments. These connect to sort of our 4 main objectives. We're really focused on helping state and local advocates, you guys, influence your state decision makers and the regulatory process to advance strategies for increasing childcare utilization and eligibility. So this is really about, this is the TA, this is helping you guys get to the people who are making decisions. We're leveraging the federal relationships and influence to build bipartisan support for these strategies, elevating bipartisan policy discussions and commitments from state leaders to improving access to quality childcare, and really utilizing and implementing a sophisticated communications and PR strategy to demonstrate demand. This came up in a lot of your proposals. We're going to see a little bit more some themes that came out across some of your needs. Communications is a big part of what you all identified, and really making sure that you all have the support for that. If you can mute yourselves, it'll be easier because then folks can jump in whenever they need to. But if you're not talking, it'd be great if you all can be muted to keep everybody else. I wanted to just talk about briefly a couple of the sort of key national activities that we're focused on. This is the work of the 5 organizations together who are organizing formal and informal meetings and briefings, both with Youth Congress, which has more than 100 women for the first time ever, more women than have ever been in Congress, and lots of people with young kids. So there's lots of opportunity here. Monitoring state administrative actions in progress and really making those connections to advocates. So here's what's happening at the state. You guys are connected to that work, really bringing those 2 things together so that everybody is sort of getting what they need to move their priorities forward. Coordinating that state-facing work with the federal-facing work, developing resources focused on the impact of child care investments. This is a huge need and a huge issue. Talking about what the increase has meant in your state and really capturing that impact while not overstating it. And this is a balance, it's a challenge, and really figuring out in particular how to talk about rates increases, the impact that has. So that's something we'll be talking a lot about. Providing advocates with recommended solutions and key messages, partnering with you guys around op-eds, stories, blogs in both progressive and conservative media outlets, elevating childcare issues and engaging in targeted strategies on social media. This came out a lot. And developing a hub for resources and updates and data. So we'll be talking more about what that's going to look like. The final and big piece of it that we're going to get into today, and we're going to talk more about providing technical assistance and support to you guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take just a little bit of time to have our partners talk about their work and who they are so that we're all on the same page for that. We're going to start with the Bipartisan Policy Center, and I'm going to turn it over to our friends over at BPC.
All righty. Lauren, this is Linda Smith, and I want to thank everyone for getting on the call with us, and we're very excited to start this work and appreciate very much the leadership of NAYC and Child Care Aware of America on this work. Most of you, or many of you, know me because I've been around for a very long time, but the organization that I represent has not been in this space for long. So we're going to talk just a little bit about what the Bipartisan Policy Center brings to this work.
I could put the audio.
Yeah, just for a moment while I set myself up, and I have headphones too.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
A lot of feedback.
To mute yourself. I'm going to mute you all in about a minute if it doesn't get quiet. My teacher.
Lauren, I think you probably should just go ahead and do that.
All right. All right, you're all muted. Now you have to use the chat room or raise your hand. I'll unmute you guys after we go through the BPC, NCAP, and FFYF talking. Go ahead, Linda.
Here at the Bipartisan Policy Center on this. First of all, who's just recently joined us is Megan Campbell, and she comes to us from the Office of Child Care, where she handled most of the data for the Child Care Block Grant and CCDF and knows this work intimately, and also worked on the child care regulation that was recently completed. So she's going to be a real resource to all of us here. Second is Chantel Meek, who's going to work with us on a consultant basis, and she also worked with us in the former administration on many, many issues around early care and education. So between the two of them, I think we're going to be able to provide a fair amount of expertise to the people who are starting these projects out there. So with that said, what does BPC bring to the table? Well, obviously, the Bipartisan Policy Center is what its name says it is. It's a nonprofit organization that tries to bring together the best ideas from both parties to promote different issues. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're working on. But that said, early childhood is a fairly new initiative for the Bipartisan Policy Center. The work started a couple of years ago with work done by Senator Santorum and George Miller, former congressman from California. And in addition to early childhood, some of the other things that we work on here, healthcare, energy, the economy, et cetera, you see those up there. In any event, our work all has to come from bipartisan, work. We here at BPC do not take positions on anything that does not have a bipartisan representation. And I just put that out there so people know sometimes we do not are not on things because there is not a bipartisan representation. So if you go to the next slide, as I said, the work started with the work of Senator Santorum and George Miller. It's been going on now for a couple of years. Our current work is driven by a report that we put out that was sponsored by both of them roughly a year ago today. And I want to just do a footnote on that one as well, is that if you haven't seen it, and I would recommend you take a look at the letters that both Senator Miller and Senator Santorum and Congressman Miller put out supporting the increases in the Child Care Development Block Grant last year, because that bipartisan letter was a pretty important part of the effort here in Washington to get the money that we did get. So with that said, building off of the work that we started with them, our work now is focusing on trying to develop a more comprehensive and sustained approach to early childhood by developing a broader consensus across party lines here in Washington and across the country. As you probably know, we released a report in December looking at the governance and administration of early childhood systems. We've had amazing response to that report and are very happy with the fact that it was taken with the spirit in which it was developed, and that is as a help to people. Then a couple of the other things we're looking on is infrastructure reform. How are we going to get better facilities for our children out there? We will be doing a webinar and releasing a report in 2 weeks on the Early Head Start Child Care Partnerships and what we're learning from them. And then obviously building a stronger multidisciplinary approach, and we'll go into that at another time. So I think with that said, what we bring to the table in this project, to the next slide, is to provide support to the states around how to do the work in convening bipartisan task force in your state, connecting with legislators, and policymakers from both parties, and how you might approach that, and then messaging for both liberals and conservatives. And some of you may be aware of the work that we did with Frank Luntz last year. We've put out a number of pieces, had a webinar, and also have a document on our website that helps understand the conservative point of view and what sells and what they will respond to in terms of messages. And finally, I think our work here in terms of connecting grantees to, across the aisle here in Washington and grow support for CCDBG. So that's a lot of stuff to throw at you in a short period of time, but we are very, very much looking forward to the work that we're going to do with these organizations and also with the states that got these grants. So I'm going to turn it back over now to Lauren, and she'll take you to the next section. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, we're going to move on to Center for American Progress. Katie, I'm trying to unmute you. Try pressing *6. Won't let me.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Ham. I'm from the Center for American Progress. I'm also here with my colleague, Brooke Butler, our early childhood campaign manager. He'll be working on this project as well. I wanted to start just by giving a little bit of background on the Center for American Progress, for those of you who aren't familiar. We are a think tank and research and advocacy organization based here in DC. CAP was founded in 2003 by John Podesta, who's a former chief of staff to President Bill Clinton and a former White House advisor to President Obama. We are a nonpartisan organization in that we're not affiliated with a particular political party, but we do consider ourselves progressive or left-leaning and occupy kind of that piece of the ideological spectrum. We have policy experts and advocacy folks here who work on a wide range of policy issues, everything from national security to K-12 education to housing. The early childhood team, like Linda said for BPC, we're relatively new. We started in 2013, and we now have a staff of about 7 people who work on research and advocacy related to early childhood policy. We do a number of products that we put out each year. Our overarching goal is to expand high-quality early childhood programs to children from birth to 5. So we work on childcare, we work on preschool, we work on home visiting a little bit. Many of you are probably most familiar with our childcare deserts work, where we look at the supply of licensed childcare around the country. That tends to be the thing that gets out there the most. But we also do a lot of different analyses and policy and advocacy work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do to support your efforts. We are an organization that kind of was founded on the principle that you need to pair policy expertise with strong communications in order to get your message out there. So since CAP's inception, we've also had just as many people working on communications as we have working on policy. And we really try to blend the two so that we don't do a report or a project that just sits on the bookshelf. So you'll kind of see that philosophy in some of the things that we've outlined here. Brooke Butler comes to us with a very strong background in social media and digital engagement. So we are definitely available for trainings or technical assistance on that front. We can also do trainings or webinars on lobby days, ghostwriting, op-ed, sample social media. We do this a lot with state partners where we'll talk to them about what's needed, draft an op-ed, and then they will submit it to a local paper for publication. We also have an in-house video team. We were able to partner with NEUAC and many of you during their annual conference to get some footage that we can use to turn into short videos. We can do that here in our studio, and in some cases, even send people out if there's a really compelling need for video storytelling. We also can do toolkits to share with providers, other advocates, parents that you're hoping to engage. We also can offer policy TA with policy ideas to pitch to elected officials. We have a state and local team that has pretty good relationships in some governor's offices and with state legislators. I'm sure all of you also have those relationships in those states, but if there's ever a way that you think someone from the outside can be helpful, we're happy to engage. And we also can kind of help identify progressive leaders in the state that we think we can help build up as champions and give them some of the tools to do that. And then finally, we also have national data on licensed child care centers and family child care homes. And we also have state-by-state data on the cost of providing high-quality child care in each state. So to the extent that that data is useful, we're happy to provide it and connect you with some of our experts here who work on that. And then the last thing I will say is that we know as a progressive organization, sometimes that posture is helpful in states and sometimes it's not, just depending on who your elected officials are at the time and the particular political climate and landscape. And so when we provide TA or resources or information to states, we kind of take the lead from them as to whether or not it's helpful for us to be visible. And we're always happy to provide you things that are unbranded or just drafts for you to take and kind of use with your own branding, whatever makes the most sense for your current context. And with that, I will turn it back to Lauren.
Thanks, Katie. I think you guys can see sort of what we mean when we're talking about sort of marshaling our resources on behalf of the work that you guys are doing, and how fun it's been to work as partners at the national level. I realize fun doesn't come up a lot necessarily, but it's fun to work together as the national partners and say, like, listen, here's what's needed, like who can fill this gap right now, who can take the resources that we have available and really deploy it to you guys. We want to be responsive to the needs, and that's really the first thing that's driving us, not sort of whether or not the credit is there for it, but really more driven about sort of, do we have what's available, who can we pull in if we don't, and really to make sure that the needs of the state and the state advocates on the ground are being met, because you guys are the ones who really can say, listen, here's what's happening, here's what's needed. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to, I think, Amanda and Charlie at First 5 Years Fund to talk a little bit about their work and what they're bringing. Amanda, are you on?
Hey there, it's Charlie. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great. Well, I am Charlie Jockin, and I'm also joined by my colleague Amanda Guarino, and we work for the First 5 Years Fund. I don't know if I can advance slides, Lauren, but we are based here in Washington, D.C. with the sole goal of ensuring that all and more children from birth through age 5 have access to high-quality early childhood education. And so as both Linda and Katie talked about before, that is all elements of the care and education of kids from birth through 5, things like childcare, preschool, home visiting, all of the above. And we are a bipartisan organization that represents a group of family foundations and their interests on early childhood education here in Washington. And next slide, we, like Linda talked about, we are a bipartisan organization that works to find ways for the right and the left on the Hill to work together to come up with solutions that improve the lives of kids from birth through age 5. And we do that through, I think on our next slide, we have, we do that through an integration of the various elements of our work. We have a strong policy team that is led by Amanda on the phone, built around expertise from Capitol Hill, expertise from the administration. Amanda spent a number of years within the within ACF at HHS, and that policy team works closely with our government affairs team that does a lot of the advocacy and lobbying on Capitol Hill and within the administration on all of the programs that we care about. And then there is a communications element to all that we do, making sure that we are elevating the positive momentum that is taking place across the country, showcasing the good things that are happening, and making sure that lawmakers and the administration are aware that things are getting better and we can be doing more to support what is happening on the ground in states and communities. And we do that, like I mentioned, through a bipartisan manner that is aimed at ensuring that we are protecting the progress that we have made and ensuring that we can continue to make progress without allowing either side of the political spectrum to use this issue as a wedge. That's the last thing that we would want to do, is have one side of the aisle take this issue up as their own. And we also focus on the short-term gains that we can make through the legislation that we know is going to come up every year, but also working towards finding bigger and better solutions to the problems that America's families are facing. And so that's part of the big effort that we'll be undertaking over the next few weeks and months and years with this new Congress, figuring out how best to ensure that the members that we have now in Congress are working together to advance the programs that exist today, but also come up with ways to do something really, really big. And I will put in a plug, as others have, and I'll take this opportunity. We do a fairly extensive national poll each year on voter sentiment on this issue. And the results of our next national poll, which was conducted over the few days after the midterm elections, will be releasing the results on Tuesday of next week. And so hopefully all of you will tune into the webinar that we'll be having with our experts, our political experts, but to kind of go over what Americans are saying about this issue on things like childcare, on things like Head Start. And I can tell you that the results are very, very, very strong, and we will be sure to incorporate a lot of the findings from our poll into this work that we will be doing with all of you. But in terms of the work that we will be doing in partnership with the groups on this phone, we really work hard to ensure that the good things that are happening at the state and local level reach members of Congress here in Washington, because the best way for them to know that the work they're doing is making a difference is by allowing their constituents to tell them about it. So that comes through things like op-eds and letters to the editor in districts from people on the ground that we know are going to wind up in the news clips of members of Congress and their staff. It's through campaigns, through emails, and social media tactics, whether it's Twitter chats and Twitter storms or paid advertising that we know is going to reach members. So all things communications, we are happy to be of service. There can be templates of op-eds and helping get those op-eds placed, and the other folks on the phone are also masters at this as well. So on the next slide, you have my contact information, and I know that Lauren will be able to put you in touch with all of us, but feel free to reach out with any questions you may have in terms of ways to reach your lawmakers on Capitol Hill with the good things that are happening.
Have the comments in Turkey is look at our website, NACI, look at these two organizations. And
all right, everybody, I'm unmuting you all for a minute so that you all can ask questions of the organization. So if you're talking, stop talking to somebody else so that you can ask questions if you have any for the organizations that just talk, CPC, CAP, and FFYF. And then we'll go a little bit more into some details on the technical assistance. Any questions for the organization?
Lauren, this is Jody from Pennsylvania. I'm just wondering if we have a specific TA request, are you thinking that, like for us, for instance, would go through you, even if we're asking for assistance from another organization, or do we directly go to the national resource?
That's a great question. So what we're going to do is we're in the process, we will have a sort of centralized way to collect information, to collect TA requests and then sort of get them out as needed. But we also want you guys to know that there is sort of like no closed door policy, basically. So whoever you go to will take it and sort of make sure that either they're the ones to provide it or that they're connecting it to the organization that can. So there is in development the process to get you all sort of like a single portal, if that's useful, that then is deployable from there. But right now, if you have a specific request, you can go to the person that you think is best likely to fulfill it. You are also always welcome to take it to me or to Jake or to Michelle and to say like, hey, here's what we're thinking we'd like who can do this for us right now.
Hello, this is Mandisa and Badgie with the New Mexico Association for the Education of Young Children. We are really excited about communications resources, so any links you can provide or like a Google folder or Dropbox with resources, your web pages, whatever. We're really excited about what we're hearing and how we can amplify what's being done. Thank you.
Awesome. So let me walk you guys through some of the ways that we categorize some of the technical assistance so that folks can see sort of what each organization is able to provide. This is not, I will say, like fully comprehensive. There's a lot of expertise out there. There was sort of, we could all check a lot of the boxes. And so figuring out sort of, okay, what do we really want to make sure that you guys have the best possible access to? There is a Google Drive that is shared. There's a folder that we'll share with you that I'll put into the chat box. So we've just created it where we will be dropping in all of the materials. There are links in the rest of the slides we'll take you guys through. There are some links to additional resources that you guys will be able to see. And a lot of the work as it's developed will be dropped in there so that folks have constant and regular access to it. The other thing that we'll hope is that Google Drive is accessible to you all to drop in your resources. We haven't talked yet about the sort of peer-to-peer resources and state support, but a lot of this can be you guys sharing resources with each other and not just sort of directional from national to each of you, but from you to each other as well. And so we hope this really becomes a repository for that. And we'll continue to develop the sort of hub for where things come, how they're organized, and that'll be sort of an evolving process over time, particularly as we get more of it to make sure that it is as accessible and sort of convenient, frankly, as possible. This first slide sort of outlines a few of the types of technical assistance: template op-eds and letter to the editor, social media tools and templates, things like infographics, video that you heard Katie talking about, polling that we know a lot of folks are excited about that came up in a number of proposals. We're excited for FFYF national poll next year. We also have some additional, there are a few states that have some specific state polling that was done by CAP in the fall. We'll follow up with those of you who are in states who will have those resources available to them. So you can see sort of who has what TA that is possible to be provided. On the second page, there's additional TA around messaging and data, two other pieces that came up very frequently and not surprisingly in everybody's proposals. So, you know, the 5 organizations who have come together for this came together in part because we really run the spectrum from around our political sort of knowledge, expertise, messaging, and beliefs. So a lot of us are really comfortable in the bipartisan space where we really want folks to be. Somebody talked about working across right and left. We know that's something that states need to do all of the time. And some of us have really cultivated expertise in conservative messaging and progressive messaging. You heard that in folks' presentations. And so really being able to access that kind of knowledge and information. In addition, many of you talked about the need for increasing knowledge of both policymakers and advocates around issues ranging from supply, the cost of care, particularly cost of quality, governance, workforce, quality generally. And so thinking about the data, how that's shared and organized. Some of you mentioned the deserts in particular, the way you are using licensing, sort of access to licensing in your state to encourage increased investments. These are all things that we want to make sure that you all have additional access to and are sort of familiar about where to go and for what for this project. So this is one way of communicating that information to you so that you can see sort of as simply as possible who has what kind of expertise and what kind you can access. Any questions about that so far? This will continue to be updated over time.
Hey, excuse me, Lauren, this is Ruth from Wisconsin.
Hey, Ruth.
Can you go back a slide?
I can.
So when you talk about governance,
yes.
Can you just say a little bit more about sort of what you're talking about there?
Yes. So Linda, this references specifically the report that Linda put out recently that she just mentioned and talking about the BPC work. If you have not had a chance to look at it, it would be great to do so and to think about the recommendations around governance. I don't know if Linda or Megan want to jump in with just a couple of thoughts about the report and the kind of recommendations that came out of it.
Well, I can jump in just quickly here, Lauren. Essentially, if you haven't looked at the report, one of our starting points on the report was that here in Washington, we hear constantly from Congress that there's a lot of money, but there's always fragmentation, overlap, duplication out there in these programs. And if we were simply more efficient, we could do, there would be a lot more that could be done out there. So we wanted to either figure out, is that true or not in the report, to start the conversation about how much is really needed. So in looking at the structures, we wanted to see, is the overlap in fact because Congress says it's so, because the agencies have made something happen, or is it in the states, if it exists at all? And so that was the premise that we looked at, and then we showed state by state where the money goes. In some states, there's 2 states in particular, there's 5 agencies administering 9 streams of money, which is inefficient, and it causes problems with Congress when they keep getting the feedback that there's all this overlap and duplication. So we wanted to identify it, put it on the radar for governors, that they can do something about this, that it is, what our finding was, that it is, with one exception, completely up to governors where they choose to put the money. And if they can look at their governance and their structures in the state, they could be more efficient. That said, every time we talk about this, we say that does not mean there's enough money, but there, in order to be as efficient as we can, states can do something here.
I think this is also, and this is a much larger and separate conversation, but several of you found out this week that you have preschool development grant funding, and thinking about the ways in which these two pieces connect. Some of the work that we will be doing together this year will be really focused on the goals of this grant in this conception, and some of it will be about making sure that it is aligned and integrated and connected to the extensive other work that you guys are doing. We know how much you all have going on. We know how much you all have going on. And to the extent that things are aligned in their goals, that we can see how this work connects to the other work, I think we'll all be the better for it. So that's just a plug for sort of thinking not just about governance in terms of the state structure, that's obviously a big part of it, but also thinking about how when we talk about that, we're also connecting that to some of the other work that's going on. Any other questions on the TA? We'll come back to this in a minute, because we'll talk about the needs for you guys. Just a reminder about sort of our goals for technical assistance and how we're going to be doing report outs and updates through written materials, and to give you all an example of those materials. So these are two links. These are functioning links. You can open them up if you're online, or we'll send them around. They are not fully completed. We're giving you guys access to them before they're filled in. But you can see the one is the state grantee summary. And so that's just so that you all know what states you are, who the lead organizations are, what the partnerships are, your contact name, phone, email, how you qualified your own state needs and opportunities, and what kind of leadership and engagement you described in your application. We thought it was really important for you guys to see the work that each of you is doing across states, and to really be able to make those connections, to be able to say, oh, okay, those are also a need in my state. Okay, let me talk to this person. The second resource is around your common activities and deliverables. This is something that we're setting up so that folks can see where we share some of the activities that we'll be working on. This is how we'll be informing the TA plan, some of the resources that get developed to be shared with everybody. Some, to your point, like Jody, requesting specific TA, a lot of you guys will need very specific, responsive to what's happening in your state TA. And sometimes there will be resources that can really be applicable to a lot of folks at once. And so where we have some common activities and deliverables, a lot of folks talk about training advocates. That's a common material that we already have a lot of, and that we want to make sure that everybody has access to, and that when we go to report and see our impact across states, we are collecting that data along the way to see the kind of impact that we're having. So folks can access these. We'll continue to update them. We're not asking you guys to put in your own activities and deliverables. We'll do that. We just wanted to give you guys the framework for it. Any questions about these kinds of resources, or what else would be useful? Okay. Looking at the categories of state needs, I'm going to turn it over to Jake from Child Care Aware, who spent time going through all of the proposals to pull out through an analysis some of the state needs that you all identified as categories. Jake, do you want to talk a little bit just about that briefly?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And thanks to all of you for putting time into your applications, and especially when it came to that beginning section around what the needs and strengths of your state were, because it's great for us to be able to see what the state landscape is in order to help provide individualized TA and really understand what your states are facing. So in the document that Lauren was referencing earlier regarding needs and strengths, we went through, we pulled out and tried to identify what you said the needs and strengths were. We also were sure to mark the strengths just as much as we could mark the needs. And that goes back to Lauren's reference of the peer-to-peer network learning groups that could be formed, whether organically or whether we set some up, because if some states are experiencing growth in some areas where other states are still lacking, then we just thought it would be great for you guys to be all aware of that. Granted, these are categories that we put together. Obviously, for example, if you go to subsidies and or like eligibility and wait lists, in one state that has a need for that area, it might look different than another state that has a need for that area. So we do just want to, have the caveat of this doesn't fully describe necessarily what's going on in the state. But we just wanted to generalize so that we could see the common themes, see the commonalities between states as well as the differences, and hopefully use this information to help with the assistance.
Thanks, Jake. One of the things that came out of this was just looking at some of the most commonly expressed needs so that we can sort of use that to inform the kinds of resources that we develop and the kinds of conversations that we have. Increased policy knowledge of and support for childcare, need for increased quality, wait lists and subsidy eligibility. Like Jake said, that ranges from your eligibility is too low to even have a wait list to you have 24,000 kids on your wait list. So that obviously that takes, those are problems categorized under the same topic, but are very different solutions. And the need to address lack of supply in infant and toddler care. So, having that out there as just for you all to see, here are some areas where you all overlapped in terms of your focus, and you'll be able to see which other states sort of identified those issues, and we'll share around some additional resources with you all next week that clarify some and go in depth a little bit more about some of this. I want to take just the last 10 minutes or so to open this up for discussion. And to really get at these questions of what you all need from the national organizations to help you meet the needs of your state. So we've talked a lot about the needs of your state, but not necessarily the needs of your organization to help you address those needs. And second question to really think about as we're thinking and designing the TA for this, we know there is no shortage of TA out in the world. And to think with you all about what's been helpful about TA, what's not been helpful about TA, and how we can avoid those mistakes so that we really are able to, in a pretty short amount of time, give you guys what you need to make a difference on the ground. So I just want to open that up for conversation for a few minutes.
Lauren, this is Ann from Minnesota.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Lauren. I think just, and I heard you say there'll be a Dropbox and there'll be some other sharing tools, but I think as you start hearing consistent themes from all of us, maybe just, alerting us to the fact that here's some things we've heard 2 or 3 times and this might be helpful to the rest of you, that kind of an information sharing has, in these other kinds of projects, has often been used, at least to me.
Excellent. Do you mean just like email alerts or like dropping things in?
I think alerting us to email, I am not a good one about routinely going and remembering to check a Dropbox unless someone reminds me there's something there. But I think just a quick note to say, here's some new resources, or this seems to be an emerging trend that we're hearing, and, just so that we can either go through you or, potentially talk with one another if we think someone else might be, facing some of the same challenges.
Thanks.
And this is Ruth. I would sort of agree with that, and maybe even take it a little bit deeper in terms of if there is a strategy during the process of this 9-month period where we see a state implement something that becomes highly effective, to draw it to our attention sort of immediately so that we can build off of successes that might be happening in other states.
Yep, in real time. I think that's great.
Hi, this is Fran from South Dakota, and I might be missing the mark on this, but I'm wondering if there is an organization that's available to help us with a marketing strategy plan for implementing the different ways to contact and reach out to others.
Let's talk more about that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll follow up with you offline, absolutely.
Fran, this is Linda Smith. Could you explain a little bit more about what when you say marketing, who are you in particular thinking of? Who would be your targets out there?
Well, I'm just getting involved with this. I'm working with Jessica Castleberry, and I'm thinking, who are we reaching out to target specifically with our grant? And then, do we have a strategy on how we're going to contact all those individuals, in different methods? I don't know if I'm describing what I'm asking very well.
So you mean policymakers in particular in your legislature? I'm just trying to get down to sort of.
Right. It's, what would be our umbrella plan to, reach out to people locally to get them involved, but also to those legislators. So I'm thinking of a comprehensive plan.
I see. Thank you.
And please tell me if I'm missing the mark.
No. That's exactly what we wanted to hear.
Yep. Did folks hear about, were folks hoping to hear about some expertise they did not hear about? Something that would be helpful that we missed?
Hey, Lauren, this is Beth.
Hey, Beth.
Hi. How is this going to lead into the discussion at Policy Forum?
Great question. So on the next slide, you'll see a couple of save the dates for things that are coming up. So actually, even before Policy Forum, we have set up a webinar on really getting into one of the big issues that we're going to have on the sort of state-federal connections is the issue around the budget process and raising the cap. And this is sort of a broader issue for why, basically, if we're going to be able to make investments in CCDBG, we need to think about the broader budget and helping to make sure that states get how the federal budget is connected to the state budget and how CCDBG in particular is both a federal issue. We know this is that's actually, you and I have talked about this, the sort of ways in which folks do not have any idea that child care comes from the government, comes from the federal government mostly. And in some states, there's good reason for that, about why that sort of issue has been obscured, but it makes it a challenge now about who we need to go to fight for this money. So some of you who have been at Policy Forum before have heard Martha Coven, who does a phenomenal job of sort of distilling some of the issues of budget and appropriations related issues in ways that are really accessible and understandable. She's going to join us for a session specifically around childcare, around budget caps, around sort of getting access to this and understanding how the federal budget works and is different from state budgets. So that's going to be one of the things that we do before Policy Forum leading into it. At Policy Forum itself, we're working on, we wanted to have this conversation and then we'll finalize the agenda for you all where we'll be able to provide specific sort of actual TA at that time based on what we're hearing the needs are. So around communications, around op-eds, you guys are really leaving with tools from Policy Forum. That morning will be from 8 to 12 on Sunday morning before we get into the rest of the 2.5 days of Policy Forum. And so this kickoff meeting sort of leads us into knowing the priorities right now for the TA that we want to make sure folks have access to a Policy Forum. That will then be followed up in April with Child Care Aware's Advocacy Summit, where folks many of you will be coming back in or in then to join for that effort as well. And so those are a couple of dates that we know folks are marking their calendars for in-person convenings that can really move us forward and give us some solid time together. Does that help us?
Yes, thank you. Perfect.
Lauren, what's the expectation for attending both the Public Policy Forum and the Advocacy Summit?
There is no requirement that you attend both Policy Forum and Advocacy Summit. We know that we're working together within 2 affiliate networks with the AUIC folks. Listen, some of you are both networks, some of you are one network, some of you are dually paired between networks. So it really depends on your state. I mean, NACCE's Policy Forum is targeted obviously towards NAOIC members and affiliates. Everybody is welcome to join, and many R&R folks do come. Same goes for the Child Care Aware's work in April. I would say it's a state-by-state sort of decision. If you want to send somebody to the Policy Forum in February and somebody else to the one in April, I know some folks are going to be going to both, and there may be folks that can't be at either. That we hope everybody can come to one or the other, if not both, or that there is a state representative from your partnership at either. And many of you are paired, so hopefully folks will be able to come to both and then take that back. Does that help?
Yep.
Feel free to let us know if you have questions. Jake, does that sound about right?
Yep.
Any other questions in the last couple of minutes, either on sort of logistics, things folks need, or on sort of helping us think about the best kind of support that you all can get access to, and anything that we should avoid doing because it's been utterly unhelpful in the past. You don't have to name names or anything.
Hey, Lauren, can I just clarify one thing too?
Sure.
It's in regards to the other partnership that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is also funding, and I just wanted to reiterate that we are working closely with that group. Even on the communications front, there is coordination happening at the national level to ensure that some of those core messages that we're communicating complement one another, just to make it stronger and to make the voices louder. And I say this because I know, some within some states that other partnership is also funded. So just knowing that the messages are complementary or should be complementary, I just wanted to reiterate that and let you know that that we are coordinating with them, although still doing separate things as well.
Absolutely.
Lauren, this is Ruth again. In terms of what works and what doesn't work for TA support, the one thing, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with the effort to have states come together and share across states every month, sort of here's what we're doing.
Yep.
But I could see if you narrow it by some of the strategy elements, and maybe offering occasional check-ins where states that might all be focusing on one element of the strategies to sort of come together and hear from each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I don't want to imply that we want you guys to be connected. We just know that there are a lot of ways in which folks come together once a month and they just do a round robin summary, and that's sort of what happens. And I think that was what we wanted to avoid. But I think your point about making sure that folks are strategizing together around a topic, that's really what we're looking for. So, and that does involve, here's what we did, but also sort of thinking together about what that means and how you move that forward in your own context and community. I think that'll be a really important piece. We do want to do monthly check-ins. I will say that. And so I don't know if we know we have West Coast folks. Actually, we have Alaska folks. So it'll always be in the afternoon so that folks can join us. I don't know if this time is good or not. I will send around something to just get a sense of timing from folks. We don't need to do that right now. But we will set up something monthly so that there is sort of both a focus on content so that folks are getting access to resources and knowledge that they need, and that sort of strategizing around a topic or issue together. All right, it is 2 o'clock. I know folks have other people to talk to and places to be, so thank you all so much for joining us today. We will be in touch. We know you've heard from us separately already in a number of cases, and we look forward to talking with you all soon. And yeah, keep your eyes open on email, and in a number of other ways, we'll be talking to everybody shortly. Hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks all.